Hello again, everybody. Today we're going to do a little painting. So what we've got here is a table full of prepped engine parts, and we're just going to do a little rattle can paint job on these. Not building a show car, but we still want things to look nice. So we've got some valve covers, a water pump, front accessory bracket, fuel rails, rear engine cover, tensioner, and thermostat cover there. And so I've already gone ahead and I started with, essentially for me, my step one was going through and cleaning up all of the flashing, the casting flash that was really jagged on the edges and in corners, stuff like that, just to, get rid of the sharp edges. I don't like scratching and cutting myself when I don't have to. I like to keep the blood inside the body. And on this, for those of you with the more keen eye and familiar with the LS stuff, this is from a Gen 4, but as you can see, there's some non-factory holes in there. And I just did this to, try to take a few ounces. I actually took about almost a half pound out of this bracket. Because once again, race car. So try to lighten things up there. After I hit it with the file and grinder and stuff, I then went ahead with some sandpaper and just kind of, again, trying to clean up the rough edges, smooth out any high spots, things like that, any little bits of rust that might have been beginning on pieces. Like this too, there was all these little flecks of aluminum casting just stuck onto the cover plate. And yeah, again here, this was a two-part casting. So where the two parts joined, they had this huge line down the middle, and on the edges here, it just was hanging out, a lot of sharp edges there. So anyway, got rid of all that. After that, then it was cleanup time. And actually, before I did all this, I degreased it all. So, just a bunch of citrus degreaser and brushes and scrubbing and rinsing and scrubbing and rinsing. Then after I sanded, I went ahead and used mineral spirits. Lots and lots of mineral spirits and rags and more scrubbing to get all the grease and bits and nasty stuff in the corners, like especially on this water pump, like this, all these little corners and crevices were all full of grease and dirt. If you don't get that stuff out of there, your paint is never going to stick in those corners, and it will start flaking and peeling off, and then the rest of your paint starts to follow suit after that from those locations. So you got to get that stuff out of there. Like even down here, these two little, you get over in these corners here, there was just grease and dirt and stuff stuck up in there. So, I used probably 100 Q-tips getting all that stuff cleaned up. Same here, all these, corners and these deep crevices in the reinforcements. You got to get that stuff out of there. So I finally got that, and then finally it was hit it with the acetone. Acetone is great for like bare metal. It strips everything off. I wouldn't use it on plastic because there's certain plastics that it will just destroy and melt and do weird things to. But for metals, it's awesome. And then the last step was just using a tack cloth. One of these little guys. You can get them just about anywhere that sells paint. And it's just like a sticky cheesecloth, and it just, you wipe it across, it gets all the dust and lint and any of that stuff. And then once you've done that, then you're ready to, start huffing some paint and get that stuff on there. So we'll go ahead, and I'm going to start with some self-etching primer. After the self-etching primer, I'll hit it with some engine enamel, and that'll pretty much be it. So then these things will be ready to go back on the engine, and they won't look like crap. So we'll pick this up after that's all done. All right. Oops. So we've got the first coat of self-etching primer on here. I gotta finish up the water pump, so I'm just gonna spray that down here quick so you guys can kind of see that. If you noticed before, I had some bits taped off. Anywhere there was a opening into a fuel rail or into the water pump, things like that. Stuff where I don't want paint, obviously I taped that off. I taped off the pulley only because, you know, from the factory, that's powder coated. If I spray this with regular spray paint, you know, that's just going to wear right off with the belt. And I don't know if that would cause any slippage issues, but I just would rather not chance it. And then, like, you know, the valve covers, obviously oil goes in there, venting. But again, we don't need bits of paint in the oil or anything like that. It probably wouldn't do any damage, but again, it doesn't need to be there either. So let's finish this up quick. And since what I'll do at the end here, or after this is dried up, is I'll go back. I'm gonna flip some of these over that need to be painted on both sides. And we will paint the backside, because obviously can't do that when you got one side wet, and otherwise you end up repainting the whole thing all over again. You'll notice I'm not blasting this thing with a cloud of paint, just giving it little blasts here and there where I need it. So number one, you don't waste as much paint, and number two, it just goes on a lot cleaner. So that helps to avoid drips and runs and those things that make it look like you're the amateur painter that you are. So just go slow, take your time, and your paint job will turn out better than my camera work here. So, all right, that should be about it for that. We're gonna give that a little time to dry, and then we'll come back and flip over the few pieces we need to flip over and do a second coat on the valve covers. There's some, come on, focus, some thin spots there. You can really see them here on this. You know, you get into these deep crevices, and it's hard to get the paint in there without pouring it on the wall, and then none of it gets into the bottom, so you got to be careful in there, otherwise you just end up with runs everywhere. You can kind of see a little better back here. There's light spots and dark spots, and that's, you know, aluminum's porous, so some parts of it will soak it up better than the other parts will. Looks like I nicked my cover there when I was moving around. That's the other thing too, is it's when you get a bunch of parts on a table like this, it gets a little tight, so you got to be careful so you're not banging your paint can against pieces that you just painted. And all right, I think that'll do it for now. All right, guys, we're back at it here. Another couple things I wanted to show you here. So once again, a good example of not being impatient. I had this set up over here, and it was close to the edge of the table, and I had it set up similar to this. Well, naturally, I walked away, and 2 seconds later, it fell off the table, and we have things like that, and things like that. You know, just spots where the paint or the primer chipped off and it went spinning across the floor. And yeah, so be patient, let it dry, lay it down so it's not going to fall over. Don't be dumb like me. Anyway, so now I've got everything set up. I went ahead and I wiped everything down again with the tack cloth just to get any overspray or dust or whatever off there. I've got everything set up right now, so the back sides of items that I'm painting both sides of, the back sides are up. That is so when I go to flip them over, if they're not quite dry or the paint on the item sticks to the table or anything like that, when I pull it off, it's not really going to matter much because it's going to be on the back side and nobody's going to see it. So that way the front side is what is being finished and is going to dry, not against a surface, and it won't have any issues with peeling off or sticking when I pull it off the table. So that is that. Also, I had to come inside. It's like 85% humidity outside right now. Plus, we're supposed to have thunderstorms, and I'm using this engine enamel from Duplicolor, and it says you have to do all of your coats within an hour, and then you need to let it sit for 3 hours before you handle it. Believe it or not, sometimes we gotta read instructions, guys. I know it's painful, but you gotta do it, especially with your paint items, because it's depending on what it is. Primers are different. Some of them are dry to the touch in like 5 minutes. Some of them you can handle in 30 minutes, et cetera, et cetera. So especially when you're using dissimilar primers and paint brands, just read the instructions. Make sure you do that all correctly. That way it doesn't look like crap at the end. So I'm gonna get some color on here and we'll come back. All right, guys, we're back again. And as you can see, we've got some color on there, and dear God, it's white. Why did I pick white? Well, as some of you or most of you are aware, this is for a race car. And the main purpose of choosing white is to quickly identify any leaks that might be going on in the engine. It's just, if something's leaking, you're going to see it. So it's going to make that part of things easy. Another reason was for heat. So parts being able to reflect heat. The block is going to end up being white as well. It's just another little thing that'll help with temperatures under the hood. So we don't have parts in the engine block heat soaking and sucking in heat because all the parts are black, and I wanted things to reflect heat and not absorb heat. So this is going to help with that. So we got our first two coats on, give this a few minutes here, and we'll put our last kind of medium wet coat on, and give that a little time before I flip things over and start in on the back, or on the front, So we're getting there, almost done with this, and once this is all painted, again, we'll let this sit I'll probably let it sit till tomorrow just to be sure everything's cured. Humidity is a bit high, and when you get higher humidity levels, that really slows down how fast the paint can dry, which is part of the reason I brought it inside here. Otherwise, I could have left it outside for 2 days and it'd probably still be tacky or soft. So, all right, well, I'll update you again here in a little bit. Thanks, guys. So now that everything has dried enough that I was able to flip it over, you can see what we've got left here. All the spots we didn't get when it was on the other side. Something I want to show you guys kind of quick too is these cool little pyramids. I think I got these at Home Depot, but they're little stands for painting. And they work really slick for, stuff like this, where you want to get an item up off of the floor or the table or what have you, so you can paint it. They come in really handy. I use them a lot for stuff like this. They work really well. They're pretty cheap. I want to say it was like a dozen of them for, I don't even think it was a few bucks, $5, something like that, but really handy little tool. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up painting the top sides of this stuff now. And once that's done, give you one last little update here so you can see how pretty everything is. Well, marginally. You can still see in here, like way down in these corners. The paint, it's really hard to get it in there. And to be honest, if you wanted to get those areas really well, you should really blast these, media blast them. Because even with all of the wiping and mineral spirits and acetone and Q-tips, I'm sure I still have you know, stuff down there that's preventing the paint from sticking really well. But it's just kind of the nature of the beast. It's like I said, it's not a show car, so I'm not going to be too concerned about it. I just want to be able to see leaks easily. So, all right, we'll be back in a bit here. Okay, guys, last portion of this video. Got everything painted, and I'm just going to go through here and quick so you can guys take a look. Again, not perfection. Looks decent, you know, especially from 5 feet away. It looks great, but you know, this is cast aluminum, and granted, I didn't go through and smooth everything out perfectly. I mean, you can see the casting in there, and the dips and divots and casting lines and things like that. I just went in and knocked down all the sharp edges. But even like the valve covers, which are probably the smoothest thing here. Let's see if I can find one of those spots. I don't know if you can see that. Those really aren't even that smooth. So if you wanted to like take a set of OE valve covers and polish them, make them really smooth, you'd have a bit of work ahead of you. I mean, they look good for what they are. So, but yeah, everything's done. Everything's white. Everything's ready to get all greasy and dirty to go back in the car. And yeah, that is about it. Trying to think if there's anything I missed here. One thing I did forget to mention earlier is, like, I don't know if you noticed me wearing the gloves, and that is not because I'm scared to get my hands dirty or get paint on them. But I just used like a nitrile glove because the oil in your skin, if you get that on the bare aluminum or even get that on the paint, that can cause issues with the paint adhering to the surface because the oil in your skin. So just wear gloves, then you don't have to worry about that. And yeah, that about covers it. So I will see you guys in the next video. Some things I hopefully have coming up here is, you know, we're going to do some more work on the engine, obviously. We got more bits to paint, the block, the valley cover. I still have to pull off the crank pulley and get the front cover off, paint that. Yes, if you're wondering, we are going to stick with the VVT. I'm crazy, you say, perhaps, but this engine doesn't have the displacement on demand. But the VVT is something that will actually be a bonus for us on the racetrack. I know the street car guys, they don't really care for it, which is fine, but for what we're doing, that's actually going to be a bonus. So we're going to leave that intact. And then the intake, I am planning on just, I don't know if some of you guys have seen, like, people will take these truck intakes and they'll shave all the ribs off so everything's smooth. I'm probably going to do that to a point, just to kind of clean up the top, get rid of some of these threaded bosses and things like that we don't need. I'm not going to go full smooth with it though, just because I don't care, and it doesn't really matter what it looks like. It just needs to be functional, and I want to get some of the crap out of the way. But bigger still is the car itself. We're going to be pulling the body off of the frame. For those that don't know, the Crown Victoria is a body on frame car. I mean, think of your old style pickup trucks or even current style pickup trucks, ladder frame, body mounts, body on top of that. That's the type of setup this is. So we're going to pull the body mounts off and remove them, and then put the body directly onto the frame and bolt it back down. That's going to really firm things up a bit. It'll drop the body down roughly an inch or so, maybe 3/4 of an inch, something like that. And it'll help make things a lot more rigid, lower the car. It's just bonuses all around. Plus, you know, you're going to shave a little more weight. You know, each one of those body mounts is, Jesus, got to be, I don't know, a pound roughly, close to that. And there's, well, depending on where you read, there's anywhere from 12 to 16 of them. So that's some more easy weight savings. So yeah, I will see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Okay guys, something I wanted to show you real quick on this paint. well, this primer. So if you look right here, you can see right there we've got some fleck of dust or debris or whatever that got into the paint. So when this stuff gets to the point where it's essentially dry to the touch, you can take this tack cloth again and gently wipe out, or some of it's going to be more stubborn, of course. A lot of times you can get this stuff out. Now I'm going to be, of course, now I'm going to eat my words here. Trying to do this without marring up the paint too bad. There we go. So I just picked it out of there. It's actually, I don't know if you can see that, but that section's actually still a little damp, so I should have waited a little longer. But, you know, and I'm painting outside too, like right here, you can see a little hair. Just wipe that out. Yeah, if it's dry to the touch, you can very carefully wipe this stuff out. Like so. And again, I'm not looking for a show quality job here, but I just like to look as good as possible. Plus that stuff, you know, like those big dust clumps, you get those, shit, see, there I got a little too carried away, and I hit that edge and it picked the primer right off that edge there. That's what I get. So don't be impatient. Make sure it's dry to the touch. Give it enough time to dry. But before you go and do your next coat, you know, try to wipe that stuff out of there if you want. And because otherwise the paint will just keep building up on it. So now I have to give that a little blast quick because I was impatient, and let that dry a little longer before I go ahead and do the color. Another thing I wanted to let you guys know is, you know, obviously some of these spots are threaded bosses. These are for the ignition coil brackets. So you can see I didn't tape those off or put anything in there. Chances are they will be fine. There's hardly anything in there now. But if you're really worried about it, you could stick a bolt or something in there, just a few threads to keep the paint out. Or you could stick some tape in there. Otherwise, what I'll probably do is I'll just go back through it with a thread chaser and clean the threads out for any of these, you know, spots where I didn't tape them off. Which is a good idea anyway when you're disassembling engine parts and putting them back together. Just go through the threads, chase them out, and clean them up. That way things go together nice and smooth. All right, we'll be back.